Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to 6 Steps to a Better Business. So welcome to 6 Steps to a Better Business. We are going to get started. Um, so first thing I want to do is introduce a little bit about Action Coach and what Action Coach is, and a little bit about me, just to give kind of a context of the qualifications that I've got so that you have a basis for understanding what this material can mean and how effective it can be and helpful it can be for you. So Action Coach actually is a franchise system, and it's the largest in the world. We have about 1,000 coaching offices. We're in about 70 countries, and it's actually more than 70 now. It was originally founded by Bradley Sugars in Australia. It is still owned by Bradley Sugars, although he is no longer in Australia. He's now here in the United States and has obtained his citizenship in the United States, just as a matter of interest. The organization was founded on the principle of world abundance through business re-education. World abundance is something that we actually look at in a couple of ways. Obviously, one of the methods, one of the layers of abundance is making sure that business owners and business leaders are increasing their incomes and wealth through the ownerships of their business and providing them the education to accomplish that. It does have a second layer, and that is increasing the numbers of employee count that they've got so that more families are employed profitably and add abundance in places through employment other than just the owner themselves. So we truly are trying to increase abundance. I say we're the world's #1 business coaching firm because we're so large. We actually operate, as I said, in about 70 countries. We coach about 15,000 businesses each week using the same systems, and it'll be principally the systems I'm going to show you today. So today we are going to cover all of the systems that are used to accomplish everything we have accomplished. We've been operating since about 1993, and we've achieved this level where we are coaching over 15,000 businesses each week. Personally, I grew up in Rochester, New York. I have an electrical engineering degree, and I worked as an engineer for a long period of time. Not as a design engineer. I didn't work in the office. I actually worked out with the customers. I was in the field all the time for about 12 years. And someplace along that line, I decided it was time for a different view and went into the business side. And from that, I picked up an MSBA at Bucknell University. And since then, I have spent about 20 years running small business units for large manufacturing corporations. Running a profit center for a large corporation is very similar to running a small business. All of the same challenges, all of the same issues. I have grown about 5 of those. So I have the experience of about 5 businesses that I have grown, in addition to the Action Coach systems that I'm going to show you today. So when I am working to teach a particular system, I'm doing it from the background of my own experience. The last business unit that I grew about 300% in 3 years. Now, I've been a business coach since about June of 2010, providing proven, actionable systems and tools that you as a business owner can implement into your business immediately. And the systems I'm going to show today can be implemented nearly immediately. Now, I say nearly immediately because some things have to be done before others, so it is a bit of a sequential kind of way of thinking. Now, that's enough about me. My purpose today, my goal today is you've invested time with me. My goal today is to reward that investment with simple, fast, and easy ways to increase your sales and profits, free up your time, and help you create an amazing team. Now, this is a little bit of a dilemma here because many people struggle with the idea of talking to a business coach because they feel like they're going to be judged and criticized for having an ugly baby kind of situation. That is not my interest at all. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about my baby, my real baby, who is now in her mid 20s. Now, I don't know about how old you are and what your experiences have been, but my baby got taught. She got taken to swimming lessons. She got taken to gymnastics. She got exposed to ballet. In fact, she did ballet for many years, maybe 9 years. She got exposed to watercolor painting for a couple of years. All of that led to, well, she also got taught violin and participated in her high school orchestra for a number of years. She also participated in the drama club as a technical lighting person, which, taking from her watercolor painting, taught her colors and composition, which led to a Cappy's Award just because she had learned watercolor painting along the way. So what I'm really trying to do is not talk about ugly babies, but talking about enhancements to what a baby can do and the outcomes that they can achieve. As a result of all of those outcomes, today she is working on her PhD at Harvard in science, specifically geology. So what we're looking for is not ugly babies. What we're looking for is how do we enhance a baby that you've got so that it can do spectacular things and go forward and produce spectacular things for yourself. Now, from that perspective, I want to flip the switch a little bit and ask you guys on the chat box to introduce yourself, your name, your company name. Who's your ideal customer? And what's your number one business challenge, or in better, maybe, what do you hope to learn about today? What is it that I can help you with today? And I will do my best to find a way to factor that into what we talk about as we go forward. Yeah, I do kind of have a set of slides I'm going to follow, but I also have a fair amount of flexibility and I can go off on a tangent if that's what it takes. If you've got a specific question, now's a great time to put it in, and I'll do as best I can to share um, ideas, if not answers, at least ideas. So if you would do that, I'd appreciate it. And I will continue on while you're typing in. And where I want to go next is I want to talk about a little bit in the terms of mindset. Now, we can have a mindset that is empowering or disempowering. And so I want to think about this dot as a point of power or a reference point, if you will. And if you think about the behaviors of looking for somebody to blame or an excuse to make for not getting to where you wanted to be, or denial about something that needs to be accomplished, well, these are disempowering, and you can see it around you. If you've had teenagers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They are looking for these things all the time. This is a very disempowering kind of behavior set. On the other hand, if you accept the fact that you're in the situation that you're in and you take ownership of being in that situation and hold yourself responsible for doing what it takes to get out of it, then we can hold ourselves accountable for having gotten stuff done. And that allows us to find a great sense of power, empowerment. We are responsible for what it is we achieve. So that is why we look at these behaviors of blame, excuses, and denial as disempowering. And we look at the behaviors of taking ownership and responsibility as empowering. We might not get the answers instantly, but we try more things. And as we try more things, we get the results that we were trying to achieve in the first place. Now, what that leads us to instantly is an understanding that the only failure is the failure to participate, to jump in and do what it takes to get to the next step, and to give 100% to get 100%. There's no such thing as failure. There are such things as experiments that didn't work, or experiments that didn't produce the results we thought we wanted, but there's no such thing as a failure. It's all just data. And yes, we have sometimes to go through a lot of data in order to get to the answer. An example I like to use is marketing. 80% of marketing doesn't really work. The question is which 80% is that? And how do we find the 20 that does work? And how can we make that 20 work better for us than it does the first time we try it? So it's a matter of jumping in and trying stuff. Don't let yourself get embarrassed because something didn't work, or feel that you would be embarrassed that something doesn't work. It's just data. Don't worry about the failure. It's not that. It's just data. So we move on from that. Now, a little bit about this game is the thought about I know something won't work. It really doesn't take us to where we want to go. Where we want to be is in a state of curiosity. So the phrase I know takes us into wrong directions. So we want to get rid of that phrase and substitute isn't that interesting, which allows us to be in a phase of curiosity. It allows us to learn more and achieve more from that. Now, I appreciate you guys dropping in your notes. Let me just quickly read them. Ideal customer, a person who has a job and wants to start a small business on the side. Fantastic. How to recruit new members. Okay, very good. David. Small established local business is good. 5 to 50. Yep. 3 years plus. That's good. Yep. Challenge. Limited time to invest in business while working on another full-time job. Those are some interesting challenges. And we'll talk to that a little bit. A goal is to get past being in a side gig, if you will, and getting to where it's a full-time gig. And what we're going to talk about as we go is a great strategy for scaling up and building, if you will, predictability. And we will get to that in a phase that we're going to talk about probably about halfway in. So that's very good. Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right. And that's what we're targeting today. What I'm hoping to share with you is what I would call BFOs, or blinding flashes of the obvious. Many of the things I'm going to talk about today you may have heard of in some form or another. And what we're going to try to do is put them in a way that you can see why they should be done as opposed to just let sit on the side. So let's go forward from here. First thing first, I'm going to share a couple of rules. If you aren't watching on your mobile phone, I'm going to ask you to turn it off or turn it to silent so that we don't get any interruptions. And I'm going to ask you to participate. So there will be times I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to ask you to jump in and throw a note into the chat box so that we can see where you're going. Now, I see that the internet is being a little bit fluky today. I'm sorry about that. I will be recording this, so if there's any bits and pieces you want to go back to and pick up, feel free. I will send the recordings to you after I edit it, and it will take me a couple of days to get it edited. There's some junk I'll have to take out along the way, but I will get the recording for both you guys as we go. Now, let's start with the thought. And the way I'm going to phrase this is most people in business only ever have a job. Now, what do I mean by a job? Well, what is a job? So in a job thought process, you tend to think of yourself as working on an hourly basis. So you're getting a wage. So I'm getting paid this much per hour. And that's cool if that's all you want out of life. And that's great. But there are opportunities. We tend to think of a job as just over broke as compared to the possibilities of a business. And we're going to talk about the real possibilities of a business here momentarily. What I worry about in the job mentality is burnout. Why do I worry about burnout? Well, there's some statistics that have been published by the IRS. And of course, the IRS doesn't know anything analytical inside a business. They know revenues and they know numbers, and that's about it. But in the case of many business owners, what tends to happen is they reach a certain stage where they feel they're running in circles, they can't keep up, and they're not quite making enough yet. What this is characterized, and I have businesses all the way up to 6 million that I'm working with that experience this emotion of feeling burned out because they don't have enough things in place working in the right way. And actually, the best place to put the systems and processes into place that we're going to talk about is right at the beginning. It's much, much easier to do it at the beginning than it is at the end. And frankly, you're already burned out. So you're asking the question, why should I do it at all? But the opportunity here is wealth. And there's a huge difference between a wage and wealth. Now, at a certain stage of business ownership, you're just earning an income. And if that's all you want is income, well, that's okay. However, the opportunity is if you approach it from a slightly different angle, you can build a business that builds wealth. And what that wealth looks like is a business that's sellable for far more than you put into it. It is possible to build a business that can sell for 5, 6, 8, 10 million. It just takes a little bit of a different angle. Now, many of the business owners that I've spoken with have said to me at that point in the conversation, well, I've never seen it done, so I don't believe it, and I don't know how it would look. Well, in fact, you have. And it's just a matter of looking around and noticing things a little bit differently. If you want to take it macroscopically, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs operated in exactly that way. They started from a back room or a garage kind of operation, and they built it into mammoth empires. Now you can say, well, that's beyond my scale. Well, there was also people like Michael Dell, people like Zuckerberg. These were all businesses that started at a very low scale and built big. If you want to think more locally here, then think about firms like Michael and Son, FH Fur, and others. These are all businesses that started as small, out of the garage kind of business size businesses, and they built well on. Yes, okay, David, that's very good. That's a great example. These are examples of businesses that can be built to true wealth. It's just a matter of how do you approach it. And what I'm going to try to do is approach it from an angle that looks at that as one of the possibilities. Great. So let's think about your business a little bit. Is your business driving you? In other words, are you running in circles and feeling hassled and harried and not really getting what you want? Or are you driving a business to that level of wealth that can be achieved if you want to? And I was clowning around with somebody the other day who brought up the idea of a Formula One car. So let's pretend for a minute you've got an immense amount of money and you decided to go out and buy a Formula One car. Could you immediately at the moment be an expert at getting the maximum performance out of a Formula One car? Well, maybe you are, and maybe you're not. I know I'm not. If you're feeling the same way about a business, that's what we're going to work on today, is how to grab that. Now let's start with a definition of a business. What do you think of as a successful business? So if you guys would put in the chat, what do you think is a definition of a successful business. And some of you may have seen this before, and that's okay. So think about what's your definition of a successful business. And this doesn't have to be your business if that's not what you're looking for. But what do you think a, a successful business consists of? Business that generates regular monthly income. Okay, that's good. A successful enhances its owners, investors, customers, employees, and society. Those are good definitions. Okay, those are good definitions. I might think of the regular monthly income as a job, just from a context point of view, and I'll show you why here. I might define a successful business as a commercial profitable enterprise that works without the owner. And in a manner of speaking, David, that might fit your definition very closely. You've gone a little bit further in some respects in that you're also trying to add social value, I believe, in that definition, and that's good too. We're trying to do that by enhancing the abundance of everybody involved. That's another angle at the same perspective, I believe. So let's talk about a framework that can take somebody to a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without the owner. And this is where 6 steps come in. So what we'll do is we're first of all going to talk about mastery. Mastery is a set of tools that help eliminate the chaos that a business owner gets into at certain stages. I mentioned earlier that there was some data that had been taken from from businesses by the IRS. In fact, they published data on about 28 million businesses through the United States. The scary part of this is only 4% of those 28 million made it past $1 million of revenue. And of those, 0.4% made it past about 10 million of revenue. As I've been doing business coaching and my own 20 years of experience of running businesses, my observation has been that most of the problems, most of the challenges came from not doing enough in the foundation stage. If we don't do enough in the foundation stage, then we have a problem building niche. Now, the niche area is the sexy piece. The sexy piece is the part where we're going out to get more customers. And the problem is, as we get more customers, we wind up in a situation where we run out of time to serve them. So if we're successful at getting customers, we have to be able to serve them. And if we want to serve them efficiently and effectively, if we want to serve them effectively and predictably and provide the service that allows them to come back, then we need to have systems and processes in place that make it repeatable and easy and actually trainable. Along the way, as we build cash flow, we can then build more systemized approaches and technology and start to build people into the system so that we can gain leverage on that and actually start to serve more and more and more clients. And from those, we can build a leadership team so that the decisions that we have to make day to day, as we build a team, a leadership team. Now, I'm going to give an example of a business I'm working with currently, and I see this over and over. I'm just going to talk about the one I'm working with currently that's very clear in this. It's about a $2 million business. The owner bought before we started working together, the owner bought some software to try to gain control of the process so that he didn't feel like he was chasing circles everywhere. And it wasn't successful. And for months, we've been working through it. And what it turns out is he had skipped past the step of building up basic operating processes and systems to simplify and train people with. So he's having to make all of the decisions himself. And that's all because he skipped past the mastery step and jumped straight into the business building or niche step. At 500,000 of revenue, it would have been far simpler to put those processes in place. And then now we could be working on the leverage side with that piece of software just fine. It would be simple. We'd have all of the basics already in place. Then he would be building a leadership team to be making the decisions for him so that he can move on and put a general manager in place, and then perhaps look at other streams of income that he could add into the business. The business he's got is very amenable to adding additional streams of income into a very nice package, which can then produce the kind of results that allow him to have financial independence, which was what he was looking for in the first place. Now, it actually is plausible to build financial independence without having to work in the business at all if you don't want to. Now, we've talked a few names of some people here, Stephen Jobs and Bill Gates. Bill Gates is completely out of his business now, still making money. Steve Jobs was still in the business, but he was still in the business because he chose to, he liked to, he was having fun in it. Both choices are viable. They're both good choices, but it's a choice. It's not a must-have. So let's move on. Let's get deeper into this. And there's a very good book. Keith Cunningham, I think, was the author of a book called The Ultimate Blueprint for an Insanely Successful Business. And he's got a phrase that talks to the effect that operators get tired, owners get rich. And the difference between the operator and the owner is exactly the things that we're talking about here. So precisely inside this vein of what we're talking about. Now, we talk about the 6 steps. In my view, that's a system. There are 2 additional major systems that we're going to talk about, lots of minor systems, but 2 major systems. One's the 5 ways, which we're going to talk about in some depth. The other is what we would call the 4 ways, which is a series of strategies. It's about a series of about 350 strategies, actually, that we use at different stages along the way. The 5 ways is encapsulated in the niche level on that chart. And so we're going to talk, and we are going to talk about that in a fair amount of extent. And that, by the way, is the secret to for a non-McDonald's franchise, if you will. It is the secret for an independent business owner to multiply and scale up the business to the level that they want to, but you need the other systems around it in order to be able to keep going. You're going to run out of capacity at some point if you don't. All right. So based on that, and David, you've been doing a great job of chiming in there. That's fantastic. Tell me a little bit, guys, about what have you learned so far? Is there one thing that jumps out at you you need to do in your business based on what we've talked about so far? David, I think the McDonald's business is, I'm not sure I'm going for the food, but I think a lot of that McDonald's system, they are fantastic in this region. They've done a wonderful job of bringing systems, easy ways to make profit to franchisees that wouldn't otherwise know how to run a great business. But if you think about all of the other businesses, yeah, I need to work on consistency. That's a fantastic point. Yes, consistency is key. And consistency is key, and that really does come from processes. They don't have to be technology-based processes. They just have to be processes. All right. So the first step in making a business be positioned, if you will, to position a business for success is to grab mastery, to get out of chaos and get into control. So that's the commercial enterprise thought, and that's where we're going to start. And I see this over and over and over and over again. If there's any one place that I think businesses struggle It's because they skipped past this step. Now, we tend to look at this in four categories. We start with the concept of destination mastery. Where do you want to go? We're going to talk about each of these in a little bit of detail. But where do you want to go with your business? Why do you want to go there? Why is it important to you to go there? What is it about there that's important to you? The second one is money mastery. Everybody wants to skip past the accounting stage. It's boring. I don't understand it. It's about numbers. The problem is if you skip past this particular one, you miss out on opportunities for profit. And that means you're working too hard for the amount of money that you're making. That's really where the secrets are visible. That's your feedback loop as to what's working well and what's not working well. Time mastery is a matter of is just like the money. If you're not measuring your time and using your time, then you're getting into a situation where you're probably not as efficient as you need to be. And then that gets us to delivery mastery. David used the word consistency. That's one aspect of consistency, and it's the tools of how do you get to the consistency. And by the way, there's another piece of it is efficiency. David's thrown in a particular. So let's talk a little bit about destination mastery. So if we think about what is your business goal, I asked the question, what's your goal and why is it your goal? And I'm going to assume it's not your goal to look like this. And this is why we go through the processes that we go through. This is why I like the wealth thought more than I like the income thought. Now, yes, we need the income, but if we're building value into the business, that means, and I'm speaking of valuation value, meaning sellable value, and a business can be built so that it has any valuation you want. That can be $5,000, that can be $5 million, that can be $500 million. It all depends on how much you're willing to learn and do that helps you get to that place. And we tend to think of it as no use in building a business if you don't know where you want to go. If you're just there and all you want is a day-to-day or month-to-month income, that's one thing. Now, we've had a rough year and a half here with COVID. And a lot of people have struggled with how COVID affected their goals. And the catch here is there is no reason for COVID or any other obstacle to affect the goals. The only thing that has to be affected is the path. So it's a case of breaking the path down and understanding the path so that we can take ourselves to the goal, taking a different path. We run into this when we drive our cars. There's sometimes we run into a situation where there's construction or an accident and we have to rethink the route of where we're going. Yes, that's right, David. Change always brings opportunities as long as we're willing to keep our mind looking for the opportunities. There were a lot of businesses that did spectacularly well in COVID because they chose to change something about what they were doing and how they were doing it. As we come out of COVID, it's going to be another series of changes. And these changes may last a while because the regulations that were put into place during COVID may have an impact on it. Yeah, well, selling hand sanitizer is one of them. I was thinking of some cleaning businesses that got spectacularly successful by doing commercial cleaning in a particular way to do a lot of sanitizing. That was one business that did extremely well. Uber has done extremely well, Uber Eats. And so there's been a lot of things that have a lot of opportunities that have built up because of a change. Going into money mastery. If we want to manage something, we have to learn how to measure it. And what does the measuring mean? What do we get from it? So we want to take a look at what are the keys to money mastery. And what we're really looking at is budgeting and reporting. Now, typical reports, P&L statements, balance sheets, statements of cash flow, those are basics. Those are the language of business. Without those three, you don't really know where you're going. Now, really, that measures where you've been. The next thing you want to know is learn how to extrapolate from where you've been to where you want to go. And this is where we get into the budgeting. Where are we going in the future? One of the standards is a cash flow forecast. So while we can look at how we did use cash, how should we use cash going into the future? And how well do we manage ourselves towards using the cash in that way, thinking in terms of investing to achieve results? Now, this graph provides an interesting context on any business. So any business can be put onto this graph. If you look at the bottom green line that says net profit, you see where it crosses the 0 point, and that's because there's a break-even threshold right there. The horizontal scale is numbers of units. The vertical scale obviously is dollars, and it doesn't matter where the numbers are up and down, you still want to know where is your break-even point. And then we want to work at controlling that, moving it to the left so that we can break even sooner and the profit can increase. The profit is the yellow line. The profit is the green line there. We want to be able to increase our profit. And we do that by knowing how to manipulate those other graphs. But we have to know where the numbers are to be able to do that. So it's not a real challenging set of math. It's all about arithmetic. There's no real sophisticated algebra or calculus here. This is all basic arithmetic, but it does take learning how to read income statements, balance sheet, and statements of cash flow. We don't necessarily have to become an accountant, but we do need to learn how to read the accounting statements and hire an accountant to do that for us. Yes, Reverend Frey, that is exactly right. There's been an awful lot of virtual online stuff done lately. I've been doing I used to do all of my coaching on a face-to-face basis. I used to do all of my presentations on a face-to-face basis. For the last year and a half, I've been doing them all in a virtual kind of way. It works quite well. People have been successfully growing their businesses on the basis of virtual. Now, there is a context of max utilization that also comes up here. That becomes a point where the profitability is going to take a hit because we're going to have to invest something. And that's going to have an impact on these curves. So these are all pieces that we need to learn how to measure and master. That then gets us to mastering our time. Now, mastering our time is a case of looking at the key priority tasks and making sure that we put enough time and attention into them at the right times. Now, little things like invoices sent on time. I actually know businesses that neglect to send their invoices because they're so busy doing the work. And they get to a place where they don't have enough cash flow. Well, what do you think the key solution would be? And for their particular case, it's not necessarily going out to get more customers. It's about getting the cash from the customers that we've already had, collecting on them. It's also a case of making sure we take care of our suppliers as well. So these items of focusing on the timeliness of key priority tasks is vital. It also gets to the point of understanding what are the activities that you're actually doing and comparing that to the activities you should be doing. Now, David, this is taken from some work that Stephen Covey did a long time back with his time quadrants. It's just represented a little bit differently in a time target type of context. We felt that the target graphic made a point a little bit more effectively than a quadrant does. The quadrant was good for the analytical people, but not everybody is quite as analytical. So, what we focused on is what are the things that are not so urgent and not so important, and are we allowing them to distract us too much? And we got to be a little bit careful, and keeping track of how we use our time can be really effective. Then, urgent but not important. And this might be like a phone call from a friend to do something that's got to be done right away. And we feel important. And really, it's just a delusion of our self importance. And so we want to make sure we think carefully, is this something we really ought to be spending much time on? We can get to things that are urgent and important. One thing that comes to my mind is the taxes. If we do them in April, then they're not only important, they are urgent. If we do them in February, they are not so urgent while they're important, and we can get them done without letting them interrupt our work on for critical customers. We don't have the distractions that are quite so important and quite so massive. So this comes down to, these are things that get us working on our business instead of in our business. And the more we can focus on that central red circle and maybe the one right around it, the more effectively we can get our business running. That allows us to take a look at what are the tasks we're actually doing and how many of them can be outsourced. Yeah, I agree with that, David. I am amazed by the number of contractors who give estimates but never actually give you an estimate. I like working with contractors because there are so many opportunities to help them get better results. It's amazing what can be done very, very, very simply in those businesses. They get so caught up in the work with the hammer and saws that they forget what it takes to actually serve customers and get paid. Yeah, there's an awful lot of opportunity. I agree with that. All right, and that gets us to a point, David, that you made before, is, are you delivering consistently? Now, consistency is really a foundation for repeat business. That's really a foundation to getting people to come back and back and back and back. And that's where the real profits come in. And that requires processes, procedures, and instructions that you can give somebody so that they can do it for you and get it done the right way. Yeah, that's a question, David. And that's exactly getting to my point that I've been trying to get to with mastery. Maybe they do have too much work, but what that really tells me is they're not in control of their processes and procedures and don't have a good way to get stuff done. What you just described is a perfect example of what I've seen, and your reaction, why did they bother coming out, is exactly the reaction prospects come to, and it creates a bad reputation for those businesses when it would have been very simple for them to put processes and procedures in place earlier in their business, and they could build a wonderful business with many happy customers just by getting things in place and then hiring people who will follow the processes. That requires them to manage the processes, and that's a step we're going to talk about in a little bit. But yeah, your point is a perfect example of why this foundational step has been so important. And that's why I've been bringing this one up. I actually find this processes and procedures step, the delivery mastery piece of this, could be one of the most vital pieces for 70% of the businesses out there. It doesn't matter if they're contractors or haircutters. It's the same thing. If they don't do their processes consistently, people are not going to come back. And we're going to talk about the impact of that on a business in a minute. David, you're talking a perfect set of examples of why this mastery step is so vital to making a business grow effectively, profitably, and predictably. And that's actually going to take us into this context of a predictable cash flow, which is what niche is all about, predictable and hopefully profitable. This is where we actually get to the profitable stage. And it has a couple of steps in it. There's a preliminary step about defining your niche. Now, there's a lot of people that talk about niche in a lot of different ways. And what we got to be really, really careful. We've chosen a definition called no price competition. Oh my goodness, how could we possibly have no price competition? Price is everything. Well, price is everything if you're selling to the group of people that are price sensitive. That's true. But if you had a valued product or service for a particular group of people that really valued the product so much and your service so much, getting back to David's points about service consistency here, if your service is valued so well, then price competition isn't really what's important. What's important is that it's your service that they're buying. So McDonald's, why do people go to McDonald's? Well, they go to McDonald's because they know exactly what they're going to get, and they get it every time or nearly every time. And that's because of their systemizing processes. They have no price competition, really. Yeah, if the value is high enough, price is never the issue. That is exactly correct. This is what it's really all about. If you can provide superior value to a specific group of people. Now, I'm going to use an example, a client I'm working with that has an online business. Now, his online business for the products he's working at selling are targeted towards men probably in the range of 20 years old to 40 years old, I would expect. The catch here is not all men in that group value that product. So it's not the entire population that's between 20 and 40. It's a certain set of people in that group. And so his target market is narrower than the entire population. We have to look at things that way. What actually is the target population? And that's a case of sitting down and experimenting and perhaps designing the business around the needs and wants of a particular individual or group of individuals. Then we have to think about the size of that population. Is it big enough to support the business that we want to pursue? If it's not, we might have to think about expanding the niche a little bit. But we actually can design our business to serve a particular kind of group. And it's a matter of getting enough information about what they want and how they want it so that we can provide the service in a manner in which that group will value it as a high value, and therefore the price isn't so important. Now, one of the tools that you can create your targeting is through a unique selling proposition and then back it up with a guarantee. Now, multiple small niches. Yes, David, you can do that. Multiple small niches can be effective. You got to be a little bit careful about how thin you go there. But if they're all related, yep, exactly. If they're all related, it can work extremely well. And it's a matter of just designing and understanding. And it makes your job a case of learning what's important to who and understanding which is the group that you serve best, which is the group that you probably shouldn't be pursuing. I saw a chart not too long back of the beer industry in which they had broken out groups of people that valued different things and how they positioned themselves with respect to those particular groups of people. So I was just talking about the beer industry who had identified different groups of people that fit with different values, some price related, some taste related. And then they position themselves to pursue different groups. Some were more effective than others. There's a very interesting breakdown of who fit with which groups. And some were obviously high priced, some were obviously low priced. If you think about it, some were light, some were dark. They were different people that valued different things. Now, I'm going to pause. David's been sharing. What have you guys learned so far? And what could you apply in your business so far based on what we've talked about? I'm going to tell a story about price. Years ago, I took a course on finance, and one of the things we did was a series of case studies of industries and companies. And there was a adult beverage company that was declining in sales, and it was declining both in dollars and volume. And it was measuring its success based on volume, and it kept lowering its price to try to sell more, and it wasn't succeeding. So they had reached a point where they could still sell out or liquidate and provide value to the stockholders. They were not into the negative territory yet. But the sales vice president made a proposal that they try something dramatic and see what happened. And what they did is they hired a very pretty woman to market as a spokeswoman, put her in some very pretty gowns in that position, put the liquid in a new container that involved a very fancy cut glass bottle, wrapped in a satin bag and into a box that was very decorative. And they raised the price by a factor of 2, I think. I think they doubled the price, as I recall. They had nothing to lose at this point. They were already on their way out. So they tried that angle. And what they discovered is their sales drastically increased. Not only in dollars, but in barrels of liquid. They had a spectacular recovery in terms of the sales volume. Now, then they did a little bit of looking to see who was buying their product. And what they discovered is that they had been selling most of their product to the lower middle class and lower economic strata, if you will, all along. And all of a sudden, with this new marketing campaign and new pricing, they were selling to a higher class group of people who were consuming more of the liquid than they'd ever had consumed before. So they had essentially switched niches from one group of people to another group of people. Now, from a date point of view, this dates back, I think, before World War II. The name of the company was Seagram's. They're still out there. I don't think they are doing as well as they were at that time, but they were selling exactly the same liquid at double the price, but they had mammothly changed their marketing to a different niche of people and were incredibly successful. If you want to think about your niche, think about who you're selling to and are you selling to the right people for what your business goal really is. Yeah, that is a very good point, Dr. Fay, is think very carefully about your niche and who you're recruiting, and recruit the people who value what you're doing, or redesign what you're doing to fit the values of the people that you're marketing to. Either way works, but it's a case of understanding what people need and want in order to drive that forward. That's a very good observation. All right, we're going to talk about niche deeper. We're going to get into some numbers here. And what I want you to think about is secrets. Now, what I'm going to show you basically is a chassis. And what's the chassis do? In this particular set of pictures, These are two different automobiles that operate on the same chassis. And that's what can happen here. The formulas that I'm going to show you, any business can be run on. We happen to like this formula in particular because for this formula, you can put many different strategies in play and create effects and know exactly what's happening in your process of building up. A key to this process is testing and measuring. So this is turning your business into a laboratory experiment. You have to keep track of numbers and you have to see what works, how well it works, use the numbers to test against, and therefore know how to improve, because you know if you do it this way, you get that, and then change how you're doing it and see what results that produces. So, from a context point of view, most businesses keep track of how many customers they have, what their revenue is, and how much profit they can make from that. So you guys know exactly how many customers you have, what your revenue is, and how much profit you got, right? It's very easy. Everybody knows that. But those are just outcomes, they're just results. And what we're going to focus on is how do we control those results? And that's the purpose of this particular formula. So let's start with a formula. This is a formula. Number of leads times conversion rate equals the number of customers that you've got. Number of transactions per customer over the time period, and I'll use a year as a time period, times the average dollar sale is the arithmetic for revenue. And then profit margin, which I'm going to treat as an efficiency factor, multiplying the revenue times this efficiency factor produces profit. So let's put some numbers in. Let's pretend we've got a business with 4,000 leads. Let's pretend we convert 25% of them into customers. How many customers do we have? Well, we have 1,000. Now, if we take 1,000 customers and each customer, well, on average, we get 2 transactions per customer. That might mean we get 5 from one customer and 1 from another customer, but we got an average of 2, and we get an average dollar sale of $100. Now, we might get $1,000 from one customer and $10 from another, but the average is 100. Then how much revenue do we have? Well, in this case, we've got $200,000. $200,000 of revenue. Now, if we've got a profit margin of 25%, then the owner gets to take home $50,000. True? Now, let's think about where that's going. If we decide, remember the blue numbers are variables. The red numbers are outcomes. If we decide we want to increase the number of leads by 10%, how would we do that? Well, let's start with where are our leads coming from now? Where do you guys get your leads from now? And then what could be another way to get leads, or what could you do with the existing methods that you're getting leads to increase them by 10% or some combination? Now, I would encourage a mature business to have about 10 different ways of capturing leads. A beginning business or a very small business doesn't have the time to manage 10 different ways of getting leads. But I would encourage a business to look at how are they getting leads and what could they do to increase the lead generation process. Now we set a target of 10%, and we're going to assume that we get 10% from this. We could do that with email campaigns. We could do that with SEO. We could do that with social media. We could do that with just plain door knocking. We could do that by cold calling. There's any number of methods. I've got a list of about 85 of them over here. So we could increase the number of leads by 10% and get to 4,400. Similarly, conversion rate. If we're converting 25%, could we learn how to sell better? Could we increase our sales skills? If we increased our target marketing, would that help us get more lead or get more conversions? I've seen people get to a very high conversion rate just by increasing their targeting and improving how effectively they marketed to the right people instead of just generalities of people. What if we built some better brochures? What if we built some better tools? What are the things that we could do that would allow us to increase our conversion rate by 10%? Now, I don't mean 25% to 35%. I mean 25% to 27.5. That's a 10% increase. How many customers do we have now? Well, in this case, we've increased by 21%, and we have 1,210 customers in an annual period of time. Is that good? I want to think about that. Now, in the baseline, we've got 2 transactions average. What if we did a better job of informing people of what all we could do for them? What if we did a better job of staying in communication with our past customers? What if we were more energetic about marketing differently to the people we'd already sold to who trust us, and we got to make sure that we do good work for them? Could we increase the number of transactions per customer to an average of 2.2? Of course we could. Now, what about the average dollar sale? Now this is part of understanding exactly how the money works in your business. But could we increase the average dollar sale? Now, part of that is helping people know more about what we could do to help them during the process of them evaluating the transaction. But another simple way is just increase your price. If you're doing a good job of niching, you can stop discounting and perhaps even increase your price. And by the way, there is a formula out there that says if you increase your price, you can look at how many customers could you afford to lose and still make more money. So that is a way to consider. One opportunity is to increase your price. And in this case, we've done it, and we're at 110. So now, what's our new revenue? Well, 1,210 times 2.2 times 110 comes out to 292,800. So we have just increased our revenue by 46% by strategically and carefully improving how we do each of those 4 steps: numbers of leads, conversion rate, number of transactions, and average dollar sale. Now that's all real great and good, but we can't take revenue into our pockets and use it. We need to take profit. So where do we go from here? Well, can we improve the efficiency of how we serve our customers? Now, this isn't just cutting costs. In fact, cutting costs may exactly be the wrong way. We have to manage our costs, but it's a case of understanding our costs and understanding how our pricing works and understanding where the money is. This is why the P&L and the balance sheet and the statements of cash flow are so important, is understanding all pieces of the P&L. And David, that's why I didn't use gross expenses, because it's not so clean as to managing the gross expenses themselves, as it's a more complex part of the system, is understanding the whole portfolio of what it is we're doing. Can we increase our efficiency? And the answer is almost always yes. Some of these get to the processes and procedures that we talked about a little bit ago, but can we increase it? And I've taken it to 10% here and gone to 27 and a half. Now, if we increase that efficiency just a little bit, then what's our new profit? Well, in this case, it's 80,525. That's a 61% increase in profit by learning how to manage these 5 different variables. Now then, what if we did that for several years in a row? And this is where the scaling up mentality can happen. What if we targeted 100% increase on all of those variables? Now, we might need 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 years to get all of that done, but is there any particular reason we couldn't set that as a goal? So what if we targeted increasing to 100% more leads, which would take us what? From 4,000 to 8,000. What if we targeted improving our conversion rate from 25% up 100% to 50%? How many new customers do we have now? Well, 50% of 8,000 is 4,000. Now, same thing with numbers of transactions. What if we got really, really good at bringing more people back to buy from us? So we increase our number of transactions, average number of transactions per customer, from 2 to 4. And what if we worked on our product mix and we really were effective at improving the average dollar sale? This is part of niche marketing too, by the way. Getting ourselves to $200 per transaction. What's our new revenue? Well, 4,000 times 4 times 200 is 3.2 million. Now, I have done this with a business, by the way. I have taken him from 700,000 to 3.2 million literally in a 3-year period of time. Well, I won't say it was just by focusing on these things, but that was the principal focus. That was the driving force of the scale up process. We had a bunch of other things we had to do along the way, but that was the tool that scaled us up. Now then, if we focus on profit margins and we can increase our efficiency from 25% to 50%, the owner would be able to take home 1.6 million. Now, I have not seen anybody able to achieve a 50% profit margin yet. It has been done. There are people in the services industries who conceivably can accomplish that, but I'm going to speculate it's a good challenge. If you were still at 25%, would you accept an $800,000 a year income, especially since you started with 50? So I don't want to set any false expectations here that this 5th one is a piece of cake. It is not. There is a lot that can be done with it. The 25 to 27 and a half is a very doable thing. There are a lot of things that can be done. I'm not sure you're going to get all the way to 50, but I think you would take the results if you did this well. It requires a lot of work to get there. And the key to this particular chart, and the reason I like this particular tool, is that it forces you to sit down and ask yourself the question, what does my organization need in it in order to serve enough customers that produce 3.2 million? What has to happen in my organization to service 8,000 leads and get a 50% conversion rate? David was nibbling at it a little bit earlier in some of his comments about contractors who come out and then never send their estimate. That's not a good example of how to operate this kind of an increase. That means that they're missing something in their organization to make sure that this happens. And this is part of the scaling up process, is learning to manage the work, all pieces of the work. And if we stay married to being the business, then we run into a capacity limit someplace. Don't know where that'll be. A common capacity limit I've seen is in the ballpark of 200,000 of revenue. But we run into a capacity limit someplace, and this is where leverage comes in, and that's one of our next topics, is leverage. Okay. Any questions so far? That takes us to leverage, and leverage is all about efficiency. And that's really about getting to the business that works for the owner. And to David's most recent point about poor at organization, this is the beginnings of taking advantage of what we did in the mastery level to turn it into an organization that does the work for them. Now, we like acronyms, and we'd like to talk about systems in saving yourself time, energy, and money. So that's a little bit of fun that we tend to think of it. There are 9 steps to systemizing a business. And we've literally got a book on this. We provide books at every step of the way for our customers. That's the book we use on this particular component. I'm going to go through these really quickly because I want to make a point. There are 9 steps. It starts with a vision statement, a mission statement, and a culture statement. What are we trying to accomplish is really what those 3 steps are about. Then the SMART goals towards the vision and mission and culture. Where are we going to go to get there? Then an organization chart. Now, this is not today's organization. This is the organization when it's fully complete. Understanding what are the functions. Then we can later talk about who's going to perform the functions. Then what are the positional contracts, not for the individuals in place, but for the functions. Now, we might have one person doing 5 functions as an example, but he's got to conform to the positional contracts of all those functions. We drive this about the functions. Then we got to have key performance indicators, or KPIs, that allow us to measure the success of each of those functions. And then we got to have how-to systems so that a person can perform those functions successfully. And then we got to have a management process in order to make sure the KPIs are being met and that the how-to systems are being followed properly. So let's start with that thought. Notice where the how-to systems are. What step are the how-to systems? Step number 8. Now, most people want to go to the how-to systems first. And the problem is you don't know if the how-to systems are the right ones or not, because you haven't matched them up with a clear vision statement. Reverend Faye just asked a really good question. What is a culture statement? Cool. So a culture statement in principle is, how do we work together? How do we treat our customers? How do we treat each other? What's important in the values of our organization? Is truth and integrity and transparency important? Or are we going to be a backstabbing set of pirates that'll take advantage of each other no matter what? Now, those are 2 different extremes, and many businesses will operate someplace in between those 2 different extremes. But it's remarkable how many are just a bunch of pirates taking advantage of whoever they can, whenever they can. The integrity, the culture statement is really a statement of values, and it gets to how we are going to treat each other. In Action Coach, we have a 14-point culture statement that we operate to, and we hold each other to it. And we have a variety, we have a formula on how many of the statements are about the customer, how many are about us, how many are about up the organization, how many are about down the organization. So there's a bit of, we have a particular formula we use amongst ourselves. I share that with my clients and allow them to plagiarize the pieces that they want, but it's basically a values statement, and it's got to be enforced. There can be no exceptions. And where we get into this is an interesting direction, Reverend Fay. People will get owners will get fearful. One particular employee will be the rainmaker, will bring in all the revenue in some way, shape, or form. However, they will violate every value dramatically, and they don't know what to do. And this can actually kill an organization, because once you've got one person who operates outside the values, it will kill the rest of the people. The rest of the people will consider that a norm. You get what you tolerate. Now, I'm thinking of a particular example of a business that did reach the 3 million mark. And that particular business, 2 of the employees went out, formed their own corporation in secret, and then they started shuttling the corporation's customers to their business because they didn't have a clear culture statement and they didn't have a way of managing what was going on. The owner found out about it when he read a document that was sitting on the printer when he came in over the weekend. Now, that's a particularly extreme example, and it's a current status. There's a court case going on over that right now, and I'm not going to go any deeper than that. But it's a messy type of scenario, and what that says is that's an owner that did not do enough to manage his processes and his people. And that's why there's a management process at the end. It has to be managed. This has to be very clear and very controlled. And this is really where the control happens, is right here, is the systemizing process sets the stage for being, people talk about fearing losing control when they hire people. This is actually the avenue or the route to taking control and maintaining control of situations like that. Yeah, David, you mentioned that he bought $1 million of new equipment last year, so he must have some money. Maybe. I have watched 1 or 2 businesses go through that scenario, and they did not know where their money was coming from. So they did not know if the equipment that they bought was providing a return on an investment or not. And the key to an investment is understanding if you're getting an ROI. If you're not getting a return on investment, then you're losing money. If you are getting a return on investment, how long is it going to take for that piece of equipment to pay for itself? And is the longevity, is the life cycle of that piece of equipment long enough to reach that point or not? So there can be some really steep questions in that point. And by the way, did he go into debt in order to pay for that piece of equipment? And how does the interest rate compare against the return on investment? So there's a bunch of questions that you get into. This is where the money mastery piece can really get tricky. Yeah. So it's a very interesting topic that you bring up there. All right, so we've got some good chat going. I really like it. What have you learned so far? What, if there was one more point that you've picked up that you could apply to your business, what would it be? Think about one specific example, and you don't have to put this in the chat if you don't want, but one specific example of where you would specifically apply that in your business. Can I speak more about KPIs? Yeah, happy to. All right. So let's think about a KPI. A KPI, or the definition of KPI literally is key performance indicator. So what's a key performance indicator? In the niche section, in the 5 ways piece, we talked about numbers of leads. So a very good KPI is how many leads do I need for the year? And let's use the 4,000 number just for simplicity's sake. I don't know what your business needs, but let's work with the 4,000 just for fun. Then how many does that work out to per week? So the simple method is to say, well, we're going to work 50 weeks out of the year, divide 4,000 by 50, and that sets a number per week. So what's that? 80 per week. So if we target 80 per week, how many are we getting today? What's our average right now? And start a process that measures how many do we receive every single week. And that would be a place we would start. Then we get into, once we know what our baseline is, then how do we control for that? Where do they come from and how do we get more? Did that explain KPIs better? And is that what you were looking for? Fantastic. Good. Then that question, done. And you can apply that any number. I've actually got a post on my website and my blog about, I think I do anyway, about dashboards, or if not, it's on LinkedIn. Dashboards are an excellent tool, and it's a matter of sitting down and understanding what are the key parameters that will tell you if your business is going in the right direction, and then measuring, and you like to get it down to a limited number of factors. 8's probably a good number, 6 or 8, no more than any more than that, and you get into it could be confusing. But if you've got 6 or 8 parameters that you can look at, then you can go digging into the details a little bit deeper when things seem to be off track. So it's a matter of sitting down and measuring all of those key parameters that tell you if you're on track, and if you're not on track, where to start looking in order to get yourself back on track. And it's always about setting a goal to achieve a particular result. Cool. Now, let's look at the next section here. This is the 4th layer, if you will, or the 4th step. And here is where we're really building for growth. Now, remember, we used niche to drive the financial results so that we can get to the revenues and profit levels that we really, really want. Or another way of looking at it is the service levels that we really, really want. And that's great, except we can't do it all by itself. So we need more people as we grow and scale up to help us get more customers served effectively. And so we need a way to go about this process to build a team. And ultimately, we're going to try to build it so that it can work and do the work. And you can sit back, receive a decent income, and the wealth as you build the valuation of the firm, because this is all about building valuation. And then this is an asset, if you will. And then you can go from there into investing in more and more and more ways of building more of a business, if you will. And that's what the synergy level will be all about. But we're going to talk about team first. Now, perhaps you know Tom Peters. Perhaps you don't. He had an interesting quote about this. Most employees are motivated, energetic, committed, enthusiastic, and loyal, except for the 8 hours a day they work for you. This is kind of a scary thought. And this really gets to leadership. And how do you lead a team towards the vision that you've set in an effective and in an efficient way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a cycle of business, a way to look at this context. Now, we use the phrase cycle of business in two different contexts. One is kind of a macroscopic context where we're talking about the economy more than we're talking about the business. In this particular cycle, I'm going to be talking about a microscopic view where we're looking inside the business. And there's our cycle. So most businesses, most small business, start with an owner serving customers. So to David's point about contractors, that's how most contractors start up. It's an owner and he is serving customers. And he learns to be very, very good at building relationships and serving customers. The problem is someplace along the way, he reaches his full capacity and it's not enough. He hasn't reached his goal yet. So he needs to build his business beyond just himself. And he does that by starting to build a team. Now, the most common method people use to hire a team is they go out and look for people that do work just like them. After all, if they worked for anybody in a similar industry, they know exactly the same things you do, right? And they do things exactly the same way you do, right? Well, mostly wrong. And what they wind up doing is getting people that are carrying around either baggage in terms of perhaps bad culture behavior, or they are the ones that the last owner didn't want, or they were just looking for a nickel more in wage, and so they're trying you. And they're there for the paycheck, and they're not really there to serve the customers so that you can make an income. And that creates a whole new set of challenges. That works for a little while as long as the owner stays oblivious, except that he's busy fighting fires because the team did things differently than they should. This is all about learning how to hire the right kind of people, and we hire them for attitude, not for skill. And then we focus our energy and our time on serving the team. That means training, that means measuring, that means managing, that means leading. And they're all different activities. If the owner can transition from being a customer service person to a team service person, then they can do a much better job of building a team that will serve customers the way the owners serve. And it's a case of if we can get to where the team is very effective at serving customers according to the vision, mission, and culture, then we've accomplished a point where customers will serve the business so that the business can serve the owner. Now, this is intended as a context point. And if we can maintain this as our goal, as a context, then we can do the things that take us there. We have 6 keys to building a winning team. It starts with strong leadership. This does not imply dictatorial necessarily. It might need dictatorial from time to time, but it is not the point. The point is a strong adherence to the vision, mission, and culture. And I mean every single decision needs to conform to the vision, mission, and culture. And everybody needs to be held to it, including that rock star. And if that rock star doesn't hold to it, then that rock star is probably the wrong person. Then we need to make sure we have a common goal. Now, what does common goal? Common goal does not mean top-down goals. Common, the key word there is common. That means everybody needs to be involved with the process of setting the goal and needs to know why we're setting that goal and where we're going with it. So there needs to be ownership amongst all team members of that goal so that we can build up a goal that we're all striving for. If we don't all participate in it, we don't all own it. Now, then we get to rules of the game, and this is another reflection on culture. We all need to conform to the same rules. Again, the rock stars must conform to everybody else on the team. And then that gets us to action plan. And if we've done a good job of building our future organization chart, and we've done a good job of building our processes and systems, then we have an action plan basically pre-created, because what we're looking for is who does what by when. And what are the handoffs? What needs to be included in the handoffs? I'm thinking in particular of a contractor I have worked with who has a very weak handoff process. They kind of make it up as they go along, and we're working at making it conform to a formula so that the salesperson has to provide a complete package to the production team so that the production team doesn't have to go back and finish the sale. Everything needs to be clearly defined. All the decisions in the selling process need to be made, and all parties need to know what's going on. The estimate needs to be the right estimate, and it needs to be able to, you could forecast cash flow from it fairly effectively. Then there reaches a point where the owner needs to be able to support risk taking by the team members as he's trained them, as he's supported them along the way. Then he has to let them learn, shall we say, the Braille method, so that the team members can look at their own learnings and evolve their ways. They can actually improve results from what the owner was doing. They can get better than the owner with good learnings about risk taking. And at some point, the owner wants to achieve 100% of the team members' involvement. But to accomplish that, he's got to include them 100% in the decision making so that they own the outcomes and they aren't just along for the ride. And that gets me exactly to the next slide, which is winning teams know how to get the right people on the right bus, in the right seat, going to the right destination. And that comes out of Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And that's a book I highly recommend reading if you haven't. But this is the real key. And hiring for attitude is a much higher success rate than hiring for skills. Skills can be taught. Attitudes, that's a very difficult thing to teach. What is the culture you're trying to build? Hire people that will fit your culture, teach them the skills you need them to learn, and then work to advance people within the organization as you go. Now that really gets us to the opportunity to build synergy. This is the owner's opportunity for growth and freedom. The synergy step there is that you transition to the place after you've put a person in charge of the day-to-day operation that we would call a general manager. The general manager title gets thrown around a lot, but really this is a person that's going to make all day-to-day decisions and maybe week-to-week decisions. And the owner doesn't need to participate all that much, maybe a couple of hours a week. This allows them to either open up another business, build a business, buy a business, or enjoy a semi-retirement, whichever way they want to go. If they've reached their financial goals, that's great. It's also a convenient moment in time to think about, when might I want to sell this business? And this then becomes a question of what valuation does this business have today? And what do I want to be able to sell it for? And then we can focus on the strategies that will allow us to scale it up, looking all the way back to niche. How do we scale it up so that we've got the business at the valuation level we're ready to sell it for, or transition in some way with an exit strategy? At this stage, this is where an owner truly has the opportunity of choice, can choose the results that they're looking for, and then can take it through to the next step. So it's all about general managers and being able to put your business on autopilot. And that gets me back to the examples that I shared at the very beginning. The Bill Gates kind of example, he basically has walked away from the business. He is no longer involved internally with the business in any way. I think he is no longer even CEO emeritus. I think he is just a stockholder at this point in time. And that's the key. Your business becomes an asset. It's something you can own stock in. Is this so big and scary that you can't see it? Well, that's okay. It's not a requirement that you can, but it is one of the choices. And that's one of the opportunities that somebody who owns a business has available to them. All right. So from there, I'm going to ask you, what have you picked up from all of this? And what can you apply from this in your business going forward? There is so much that can be done with a business. Picking from Sir Branson, quoting from Richard Branson, if you can learn to run one business successfully, and I would mean autonomously from there, then there's no reason you can't run any number of businesses at the same time, because the principles are all the same. You remember my chassis point. That's really what he's saying. Any business really functions on a chassis. They're all basically the same. Some have a long cycle, some have a short cycle, but the principles are all the same. So I'm going to throw out here 12 months from now, if you remember my two guys from the beginning, 12 months from today, you'll arrive. The question is, where will you arrive at a business that runs itself, or will you still be running it by yourself? Now, I'm going to play around with this a little bit. It doesn't take 12 months to go through this. It takes a lot more than 12 months. It takes a few years, several years often. But the question is, where do you want to get to, and do you want to start making progress now? Now, I'm going to offer something here. There are two directions you can choose. So you can choose to go improve your business on your own, or we can speed up the process of getting massive results in your business. That's really what coaching is all about. I'm going to talk a little bit about your options here in a second. Just to play around here, I was clowning around with a friend. I mentioned the Formula One. If you were rich enough to buy a Formula One car, would you know today how to get the most out of it? Or would you rather take some time and learn what you can do to get the most out of your business? With that, I am offering a free 1-hour coaching session. I guarantee you'll walk away with 3 or 4 actionable ideas or strategies that you can implement. We're going to cover a lot of ground, just like we did today. Anybody who takes me up on that, I'm going to offer this as a way to look at the 6 steps in a little bit more detail. I know you can't read it, it's too small, but that is the 6 steps broken down in as deep as we could go on one page. There's a lot more to it than that, but that kind of gets it at least a 1-page level. That's bringing it down from the 35,000 foot level, maybe to the 10,000 foot level. Typical coaching solutions I have offered most people can go anywhere from mentoring at a 1-to-1 level, group coaching to bring it down a price point or two, Action Club, which is more of an education. That's where we break this down and we spend coaching 1 to 2 hours going through each of the steps that we just did, or a block of hours sometimes where we just work on a single project. And then there is an opportunity, if you wish to join my clients for a very small fee, to join my clients in what we call Growth Club, which is quarterly planning. And I will do the next one probably in mid or late August, which I got to get in the calendar pretty soon. Just to quote Brad Sugars, who is the founder of this organization, you know you made a good decision when it brings up fear or excitement. If you're feeling excited or fearful, I'm happy to have you come join me. We can have a good chat. I'd love to have an opportunity just to sit down and chat. So with that, I'm going to divert to you guys. Of the things I've talked about today, what can I help you with most? David, just to follow up on your comment about a lot of information, there is a lot of content. There is a lot that can be done. We can get into an amazing level of detail, and I do sometimes with people. It's incredible what can be done with a business. It's just a matter of sitting down and looking at it from the right angle, tweaking, finding opportunities and tweaking. I hope I've shared some good value with you guys. I hope there's some content here that you can take advantage of right now. That's really what I hope for from this. If you want to chat, if you want to take me up on the free coaching session, we'll do it by Zoom. The email address at the bottom of that slide there will be just fine, or you can say something in the chat box either way, and I'll get back to you, and we'll set a time, and I'll do the best I can to help with what you got. If you did get value from this, I'd appreciate a 5-star review on Google Reviews to help others decide to join future webinars like this. Google Reviews, LinkedIn, Facebook. I happen to like Google Reviews or LinkedIn best, but whichever you're most comfortable with, I'd appreciate a comment to the effect of this webinar. And to quote Jim Rohn, never wish your life was easier. Wish you were better. Work harder on yourself, you do on your job. And with that, time to get into action, guys. Take what we've done, take what we've talked about, put it to use. And again, if you got questions, I'm here, but that's all the content I have. And if you've got questions, I am still happy to do my best to answer them and bring me back into the picture. I'm going to assume at this point that I've answered all the questions, or maybe I've provided so much information you don't know what to ask. I'm still happy to answer questions. You've got my email address there. And that's all I've got, guys. Have yourself a great week. Go out and be successful. Build great businesses. Enjoy. Have a great week.